Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Candace Nelson turned a cupcake into an empire. Today, she'll tell us how. Candace, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
You have a great title for a book and a great product because I love sweets. Your title is Sweet Success, and your company is named Sprinkles. Am I correct?
That's right.
Now, going through your book, we would think you were that little kid growing up who was always baking or hanging around the kitchen, but you were actually in, if I'm correct, wealth management and the financial world and kind of unhappy. Can you tell us your story?
Absolutely. So I was actually both of those things. I was a little girl who grew up baking, but I wasn't raised to believe that I could make a career out of it. So out of college, I went to work at an investment bank and then went to work at a technology company. It was the height of the late 90s, the dot-com boom. And of course, what happened next? But the dot-com bust. And I was without a job, without any prospects, and really just kind of scratching my head like, I thought I was doing all the right things, and here I am sitting on the couch with nothing but time on my hands. So it was the first time in my life that I was really released from these rules and these constructs that I had been led to believe would lead me to success. And I started to play. I started to play in my kitchen, and I rekindled my love for baking. And so I decided to go to pastry school instead of business school, which was a real sharp left turn in my life.
That must have shocked. I have to say, your parents. I mean, most parents, if you go to medical school, get the MBA, go to business school, and you said you're going to pastry school. What did they throw at you, or did they throw you out of the house?
I think everyone thought it was a phase because certainly banking to baking, that was not the track.
Oh, that's a good title for the next book, Banking to Baking. I love that. Write that down someplace. But
I sure will.
You also mentioned that you were really miserable in that world. Am I correct? You were anxious. It was like late Fridays, you would get assignments that had to be done by Monday morning.
It really was soul-sucking work. And for me as a business owner, I care so much about company culture and whether my team is happy and thriving in their jobs. That was certainly not a concern as a financial analyst in the investment banking days. I remember there was one managing director who would come out and choose, his victim to get in the car with him and drive down to Silicon Valley, which, you'd basically spend your half the day in the car just so he could use the carpool lane. So you were like a pawn in his game, and then you come back to work having lost all this time, because of course this was pre-iPhone days. You weren't getting any work done when you weren't at your desk, and you'd have to basically pull an all-nighter. So this was like the antithesis of good company culture.
Wow. And I can tell our audience, obviously this is radio, but your face is beaming. And even if I didn't know what your book was about, I would know that you found the right calling in the world, whether it was religious, teaching, accounting, or as it is now, baking and being an entrepreneur. In dealing with entrepreneurs, is there something special about them? Are they born? I mean, obviously, some people are born lucky. They have the connections. Maybe they have inside track to getting financing, etc. Is there something special about them?
I think there is this myth that entrepreneurs are born and not made. And all I can talk about is myself. I was not a born entrepreneur. My dad was a corporate lawyer. He thought everything was very risky. And I was raised to believe in traditional education and to follow a traditional corporate path. I never thought I could be an entrepreneur. But there is nothing more rewarding than, dreaming up a vision for the world and working your heart out to make it come to life. And that's the essence of entrepreneurship. I really do believe that all of the characteristics that make a great entrepreneur can be learned. And I go over so many of those in my book, Sweet Success.
Now, what about sales ability? I would think that would be something that you would almost want built in, because obviously if you have a product or a service, you have to get out there and, in quotes, sell it in some way or form, whether it's through marketing or getting the banks to finance you, etc. Is that one of those natural things that we need, or do we just hire good salespeople?
Well, as a startup founder, resources are scarce. So you're going to have to wear a lot of hats, and it can be very helpful if you're good at sales because you are selling to everyone. You're selling to your investors to believe in your idea. You're selling your product to customers. You're even selling your business to suppliers who may not want to supply to you. But what I will say is, I don't know that I would necessarily put salesmanship top of my list of skill sets, but what I had was passion. I truly believed in my idea. And this passion just sort of became like a sales tool because it was this infectious energy that, opened doors and led to opportunities. People just kind of caught my enthusiasm and they were in.
I think we all do that. If we're around somebody who's enthusiastic, and as I said, I can just see your face and I'm looking at it and I said, whatever it is you're doing, even if I didn't know you, if I hadn't had your book before, you're enjoying it. You either just came from a comedy club or something because you're kind of beaming. No, you're very happy, or you just went on the dating show and found Mr. Right or Miss Right, whatever. But you have that look on your face of real happiness, and obviously that's what we would all like. We're jealous because most of us are working the 10-hour day or 12-hour day and not finding that, and as you said, maybe a bit anxious. Talk about that, because I know in your book you mentioned several times passion and a purpose. How did you find that purpose? When did it really come out in your life? I know going from wealth management into this field, but did the magic go on one day? I'll do this instead of that, or instead of being a teacher?
It was a process, but I will say there was one moment in my life that really was enlightening for me, and that was 9/11. I had recently lost my job in the dot-com bust, and then a few months later, 9/11 happened, which was such an incredibly tragic event. And it led to a personal epiphany of mine, which was that, if this is all so fleeting, what am I doing pursuing a career that I don't love? And I just made that decision and that promise to myself that I wasn't going to spend one more minute, going to a job that felt just draining and uninspiring. And that was the beginning of my journey in embracing my passion and following a career that brought me joy and gave back to the world in some small way.
Now, a small way, cupcakes, perfect. Now,
right, even just a small piece of cake. I mean, spreading that joy, to me, that felt meaningful.
And obviously it does really feel good. And I think in a way we're all jealous, because if we could be doing something that gets people to smile, little kids to smile, old people to smile, and gives them joy, and it's a career for us, what more could we even want? I mean, that's everything. When you were dealing with this, did you find that, was there any skills that you said to yourself, gee, I'm really lacking this. This is going to hold me back. I'm either not good in accounting or I don't know anything about marketing?
Absolutely. I think we all are, or should be at least, somewhat aware of our skill sets. And as much as you have to wear all the hats as a founder, you definitely don't want to spend a lot of time doing what you're not that good at. For me, that was, I actually wasn't a great manager of people. I really am more creative. I like the marketing side. I love working alongside my team. I just didn't love managing them. And I was so lucky. I mean, you mentioned the dating show. I am so lucky to have been married to my husband and partner in the business for 22 years. So we were able to divide and conquer. He had a real handle on the finance and the team management. And then I ended up becoming the brand ambassador, the product, and the marketing. And we were a really great team with complementary skill sets, but we both had an incredible work ethic.
Now that sounds really tough, because after a day of work and maybe a few arguments, there's got to be some disagreements. Now you have to go home with the employer or the manager or the CEO or whatever your husband's title is, and he has to go home with the boss. And does that make for unique problems?
I think as long as you know how to work through conflict, and my husband and I figured that out a long time ago, we really use humor to diffuse any tension or stress. And it's not that we don't disagree. We certainly do, but we have a great way of working through that. And at the end of the day, we both love what we do, and we love being able to come home with it most days.
Okay. And I thank you for your honesty, and I hope I didn't put you too much on the spot with that question.
Oh, no. People ask me that question all the time. I'm happy to answer it.
Candace, at this point in the show, we'd like to remind our listeners that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Candace Nelson, Nelson. Her book is Sweet Success. And Candace, we're going to ask you the website where we can find out some more information.
Absolutely. That's Candace-Nelson.com. And of course, if you want to look at my businesses, we've got sprinkles.com and pizzana.com, my new pizza venture.
Even better. Okay. We get two for the price of one. And to our audience, if you miss part of the show or want to recommend it to someone, you can go to nccradio.org. Just look for Secrets of Success and then the particular show, Sweet Success, to listen to a podcast at any time, any place. You can take notes and then you can be a competitor for Candace and really make life exciting.
Hey, now.
Candace, how do we find our passion? Now, you found it, but I know that you mentioned in the book some ways that you recommend that we can go out and say, we like things, but what's going to really make us exciting and make us smile as much as you do?
I think you have to think about the things that bring you joy, the things that you love doing, just to be doing them without any expectation of outcome or reward. And start there. Where is it that you lose a sense of time? Where are you in your flow? And I will also say that not every joyful hobby or passion should become a business. And that's one of the most important things that I go through in my book is, asking yourself, going down the checklist of whether this should be a business, what the market size is, do you have that level of differentiation, and are you willing to go full force on this? And of course, these days, a lot of people are kind of figuring that out by side hustling first, which is a great way to test the waters. What I did, this was kind of pre-side hustle days. I started small. I started baking out of my West Hollywood apartment so that I could test the market in a small way before I went all in, signing a lease, renovating a space. And I really, really believe you should do that. I think you need to dream very big, unwieldy dreams, but I think you need to start small.
Candace, I would imagine that a lot of your friends and maybe parents and people close to you had somewhat negative, because everybody says, oh, why don't you had a good job. They think of wealth management and this gave you a future and you have benefits. And look, in 3 years, you could be the vice president of something you hate. And, things like that. Was that difficult to overcome or did you not have that experience?
I do not want to say it wasn't difficult, but I was so passionate about my idea that in spite of the many naysayers around me, I just had to pursue it. I think the regret that I would have felt from not pursuing it would be worse than any failure and, failure of reputation, disappointment from everyone around me that I could have possibly faced. I just had to pursue it and I was unstoppable.
If someone in our audience is looking for that passion that they have or that interest and they're just maybe not catching on to it, do you find that the people in our circle or closest to us can see things in us that a lot of us don't see? Like if you're a good dancer, you naturally think everybody can do it. And the good athlete thinks, why can't you hit a golf ball 300 yards? But the rest of us can only hit it 120 or 150 or 180. Do others see it sometime and say to you, you should be in music or you should be a teacher or something? I don't mean you personally, but do our friends see sometimes skills that we miss?
Absolutely. I mean, that is the definition of a friend. They see you in a better light than you even do yourself. And if you are having a hard time, coming to terms with what are you good at? What are your passions? First, I recommend writing them down. If you're coming up short, ask your friend. They know what you're best at. They see you in the best light. We are all our own worst critics.
Obviously, being an entrepreneur, we love that word. And that's one of those cool words. We'd love to say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur or I own that business. But the tough part of that is most people can leave a lot of businesses, less so perhaps today with the cell phones and the computers, etc. But you can never turn it off. You go to bed, know tomorrow morning you have to make something happen to bring that next check come in. And there's always going to be some problems because as the boss, you're the problem solver. That's one of the important things that the founder has to do. And of course, make big decisions. Are you going to expand, contract, add new products, release a vendor, bring on a new vendor? Does that get to you sometime? Or how do you wind down? Do you go out and jog? Do you have 8 little dogs that you pet?
Oh, yes. I have an adorable dog. And when I am feeling stressed, there is something so beautiful and relaxing about just patting my dog on the couch and really being connected with him, but also the same with my children. I love time with my children. I love time in nature. I go for hikes outdoors. I go for runs on the treadmill and really sweat it out when I'm feeling extra frustrated. But you're right. Being an entrepreneur, and particularly in these days of smartphones and social media, you are always on, and there is an epidemic of burnout as a result. So you really have to be so intentional with turning it off at a certain time and, taking care of yourself. Self-care is not a luxury. It really is about restoring yourself so you can be that leader when you go into work the next day. Everyone is looking to you to solve those problems, as you said. And if you're depleted, you're not going to be able to give back to your company and your team.
Do you have in your own life just a cutoff rule, like no business after 7 o'clock or after 9 o'clock on Friday evening, or something that just gives you a segment of the week that's your time for whatever you enjoy?
I am trying to get better about that, not just for myself, because I find that when I'm on my phone or on my computer late at night, there's something with the blue light that's very stimulating, and it's hard for me to sleep. But also when I'm firing off emails to my team at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, which guilty, I have done, because I get those creative brainstorms all the time, and I want to fire off those emails when I get them because I'm all fired up. But then that sets an expectation from my team that I want them to be working at that time. And that's not the message that I'm trying to convey. I want to protect my team's work-life balance as well. So sometimes I'll write that email, I'll put it in drafts, but just in general, absolutely. After dinner, I'm trying not to look at my phone. That blue light is just so stimulating. That social media is so sticky. I just want to go down that rabbit hole, and it's too tempting.
When you see other entrepreneurs and doing their work, is there something you see and say, you know what? That's what I don't want to be. And you don't have to obviously name them, but some traits that you say, I don't want to be like that, or I never want to be that person, even if it would make a lot more money, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think I'm a big proponent of building a great company culture and not instilling, work by fear. But inspiring people to do their best because they want to bring their best to you and to work. So it's really all about how culture is essentially how you make your team feel. It's how you make them feel when they show up to work every day. And listen, I have a lot of incredible founders in my life, and I don't see this often, but certainly when I've seen, team members not being treated respectfully, I 100% never want to be that person.
Are there companies that you really admire? And again, not trying to put you on the spot, but do you look at some company and say, I want to be like Mary or Joe in that company, or that's the image I want, they do the job so well, and maybe it's a restaurant firm or a food firm or, some totally different field?
Sure. No, I've always really admired Houston's, which is a restaurant chain, privately owned. Their hospitality is on point. Their training is on point. And they are packed, waiting room only at all of their restaurants all of the time. They've just got it down to such an incredibly tight system. And I've always admired them as a business in terms of, their style of hospitality and their training, all of it. I really admire them, yes.
In your book, you have something that says we should reject the impostor syndrome. What is that? That sounds like one of those cool terms, but what is the imposter syndrome, and why do we want to reject it?
Well, and I'll start by saying that imposter syndrome, many people have it, but more women than men have it. And imposter syndrome is this sense of feeling like a fraud and feeling like you don't belong in the room with everyone else. And I think for a lot of women, we haven't necessarily grown up with the same number of models of women who are leading companies or sitting in boardrooms. And so when we do end up in those situations, we maybe are more likely to feel like we don't belong there. And listen, all I have to say is you are not alone. Some of the most high achieving celebrities, athletes, musicians, business people in the world have admitted to suffering from imposter syndrome. So know that you're human and feel the fear and do it anyway.
I think that's good advice for all of us, and I love the way you put that. Candace, once again, I want our audience to know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Our guest today is Candace Nelson. She's the author of Sweet Success. This is a book about her company. And Candace, would you tell us the website where we can learn more?
Absolutely. Candace-Nelson.com. I'm also on Instagram and TikTok at Candace Nelson.
And I will tell our listeners that this, like most of the books that we really like, it's an easy read. It's not something difficult or you're going to get bogged down with business terms, etc. This is for that person who was like Candace, who says, maybe I'd like to switch, but do I know enough about business? Do I know enough about starting something new? This is a great book to read. You'll learn a lot about it. You'll see what she went through, and you'll then make decisions for your own life. If you would like to hear more of this show or miss the first part, you can go to nccradio.org, look for Secrets of Success, and then Sweet Success with our guest, Candace Nelson. Candace, are there any mentors, and I think I know the answer to this, but you can add some to what we talked about before the show, that helped you on your journey, either authors or CEOs, et cetera, of other companies?
Well, I have to shout out to Karen, who was the mother of a friend of mine here in Los Angeles who had a little bakery on Pico Boulevard. And when my husband and I decided to open Sprinkles, and we had never worked in the restaurant world before or in the bakery world, and we were struggling with questions like, how do we schedule a staff? What sort of equipment do we buy? I mean, just really basic questions. She invited us over to her bakery. She would feed us chocolate chip cookies and milk, and she would tell us everything she could share about running a bakery. And I am forever grateful to her because that was just such important information. I also, and we bonded about this before we started talking, I love self-help and business books. I love Jack Canfield's Success Principles.
Right? That's the title. Yep. That's what we talked about.
And I know that you're a fan of his work as well. So, mentorship was less of a thing or a buzzword when I was coming up in the career world. And I wish it had been, more, I wish it had been more common, because I certainly could have used it. And that was really one of the inspirations behind me writing Sweet Success. Is this was the book I wish I had before I started Sprinkles. And now mentorship has truly blossomed. I am mentoring other female founders, and I highly recommend finding a mentor. If you're struggling to find one, think about the people you most admire and go for it. Send them a DM, reach out to them on LinkedIn. The worst you can hear is no.
And most, I have to say, certainly the ones we've had on our show, much like you, they're very willing to give of their expertise and time. And if we were to put a price on it, I'm sure it would be more than the most expensive doctor or lawyer, because they could be taking us from just a minimal living to doing what we really love, as you bring out in your book, and how important that is to you, etc. What was the one thing when you got started you said, oh, blank, and you can fill in your favorite dirty word there, oh, blank, why did I do this? I know nothing about accounting, marketing, or selling to a corporation. What came about when you hit that hill in the road?
Well, it came really early, because the day we opened our doors, and keep in mind, everyone still thought this was a ridiculous idea, because we were opening at the height of the low carb craze. Most people were not eating carbohydrates. And here we were opening a temple to cupcakes. We also happened to be opening in Los Angeles, which is much better known for green juice than cupcakes. And we were selling aspirational cupcakes for $3 when people were used to spending 50 cents at the grocery store. So what we were doing was really flying in the face of expectation. Now, having said that, I'm a big believer that you have to make people pay attention. And so sometimes that is zigging when other people are zagging, right? So we opened, and we really had piqued people's curiosity, and there was a line out the door. Well, I thought 200 cupcakes would be enough to get us through the day. We were sold out in 2 hours. And so for months on end, we struggled with our production capacity, supply. It was really difficult for me to scale up those recipes. We needed new equipment. We needed more members of our team. And you can't fix that overnight. So for months on end, we were sold out. We had lines out the door. We had angry mobs demanding cupcakes. And all I could think of was, I got into this world because I wanted to bring joy to it. I wanted to unify people and give people a happy experience. And everyone was so mad at me.
You know, that's a wonderful problem. I mean, every business would love it. And all I can think of when you're saying that is the Seinfeld, the soup Nazi. You were kind of the cupcake Nazi, that you would run out after 200 cupcakes, which I guess in the cupcake world is really nothing. That's about 15 or 16 dozen. And, you know, people come in, if they really like something, they can go through that in no time. So that while it's a wonderful problem, though, it must have been daunting to say, how do I go from making 200 to maybe 2,000 or more even?
Well, it really was. And for the most part, here are people who had driven across town, which in LA is no small feat, battled traffic, found parking, waited in line to be told that they could only have one. I mean, we would cap the number of cupcakes. We'd write these, count the number of people in line, how many cupcakes we had left, and just tell them, this is as many as you can order. Well, let me tell you what, this clientele is not used to being told they can't have what they want, which I was devastated to have to do all day long. I just sat at the front counter and said, I'm so sorry. We're doing everything we can. Most people these days will not give you a second chance if you disappoint them that badly. What was remarkable about our story was that people did end up giving us a second chance. I think partially because they saw my husband and I behind the counter working so hard and really doing our best. And so they felt that we were authentically, doing the best that we could. And they kind of took pity on us. But also there was a factor of like the scarcity fueling demand and this sort of FOMO that resulted because people could not get their hands on these cupcakes. It was almost like, what is this? Some sort of Hermes Birkin bag? What do you mean you can't get a cupcake at this cupcake shop? So there was a funny psychology that ended up fueling the demand and sort of the viral marketing of our business that worked in our favor. But I would never recommend strategically not having your product in stock.
That's like the restaurant that has the line outside. When you get in, you say, wait, there's nobody in here. There's only 2 tables occupied. But for you, it was real. And again,
Yes.
must have been, while a daunting problem for a business starting off, certainly a great problem, and I think we would all hope for that. Candace, it's been a lot of fun talking to you today. Again, I want our audience to know the book is Sweet Success. It's by our guest, Candace, spelled Candace, last name Nelson, Nelson. Candace, give us the website once again.
Absolutely. It's Candace-Nelson.com. And thank you for mentioning that I'm an ACE, because there are a lot of ICE Candaces out there.
Well, that's what I figured. If someone's looking for your book, they might do like I do. I'm a terrible speller, and I would go with the other spelling. So it's Candace, and then, of course, Nelson. That's a nice, easy word. Candace, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to your next book when it comes out. You've made me very, very hungry. So as soon as I finish here, I'm getting out of here and looking for some sprinkles to make me feel a little more fuller. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.